recently came across some really good information in regard to PCOS. It's a presentation uh, by Dr. Nadia, who is a naturopathic doctor who experienced PCOS or PCOS, and also Dr. Jason Fung, who describes the mechanism of PCOS. And, insulin resistance is really key to the whole matter. Um, I'll give clips of their presentation, and also leave a link, well, to all the videos, but this is really a good presentation if you think you have PCOS. Uh, One thing I would want to add to that is having a doctor do a thorough evaluation of diagnosing you with PCOS. I have a couple of clips from people that were misdiagnosed, one with a prolactinoma and one with Cushing syndrome. And it's just so important to have a good doctor to screen you for those things, because as you'll see if you go, link back to Vanessa's videos, she suffered a very long time diagnosed with PCOS, but in reality had Cushing's. And I stated in other videos, Cushing's is not nearly as rare as they make it out to be. So I would consider it really important to be screened for that, as well as a prolactin issue. Okay, I'm not going to chatter too long. They do get into ketogenic diet, and I'll link to my video in regard to nutrition and chronic illness, what things help me get onto a ketogenic diet and am really enjoying it. I mean, deprived, no way. I feel a lot better, and I was able to get off metformin. Okay, enjoy the video and see the links.
So a couple months ago, this will be like the shorter version of it. A couple months ago, I told you guys that I had PCOS, and in fact, come to find out, that is actually not what I have. I got misdiagnosed. I went to my doctor here in Northern California. I demanded that I go see, or I told her that I wanted to go see an endocrinologist because I felt like that was her specialty. So I'd rather go see someone who specializes in, you know, something rather than just being a general doctor. Especially since I know that my hormones are all out of whack and I'm completely just not normal right now as far as like my hormones. So I went to an endocrinologist. From there, I got 2 blood tests done because the first one came back that I had a high level of prolactin in my system, and she was like, okay, well that's okay, so that's kind of weird. So let's have you do another test, except I want you to, do like the blood or do the fasting before you do the blood test. Did that, came back exactly the same. It came back higher. The prolactin in my system came back higher the second time. So she told me that with that, usually she would schedule an MRI because usually with a high level of prolactin in the body, there's usually a brain tumor of some sort in the pituitary gland. So got my MRI done. The results came back that I indeed actually did have a brain tumor, and it's not cancerous. It's very small in my pituitary gland. That doesn't take away the fact that, like, this whole time I thought I had PCOS, and it doesn't take away the fact that, although yes, I finally am so relieved to figure out what I have, and this has been my answer the whole time.
Hey guys, it's Vanessa. Welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to make a quick video on how I got diagnosed with Cushing syndrome. It took me a few years to go get diagnosed, and during those times, I saw a lot of doctors who kind of brushed me off and told me, oh, you know, you just have PCOS, you're just depressed, get on antidepressants, you need to go on a diet and lose some weight. And you know, they would just always like try to prescribe me birth control pills as a solution. And I did birth control pills, on some kind of acne regimen, and on antidepressants to help with my symptoms, but nothing ever truly like fixed the root cause of it. And I went to so many doctors, and all these doctors told me like, no, nothing's wrong with you. So I really believed them, but you know, that was just like a scary thing, because nobody even was trained to look out for Cushing syndrome or Cushing's disease. And so I went for a very long time feeling like this. Let's see, eventually, after all these years of doctors saying no, it was very discouraging for me to even want to go see another doctor, because I just felt like nobody knew what was wrong with me. And maybe I just have to live this way, you know, maybe I am just like, I just have to accept the fact that like I'm getting all these symptoms, and I just have to live this way because maybe I did something wrong and I'm being punished for it. Yes, that's really how I thought. Okay, there was just so much shame and guilt into being sick but not knowing that you're sick, and a lot of self-hate going on. But you know, as in my last video, I shared that I finally broke down, and I was just sick and tired of living this way, and I just needed to really get down and figure out the root cause of it. So this time around, I wasn't going to take no for an answer. So I finally broke down, and I did schedule an appointment to go see the endocrinologist, and he was a very well-known endocrinologist, and I'll like put his the link to his site down below if you guys ever, you know, want to go get your hormones tested. He's a really good doctor. Okay, it doesn't hurt that he's handsome too. But okay, so I finally broke down and saw the endocrinologist, and it took me maybe 3 to 4 weeks to actually even get an appointment with him, because he's very well known and he's a little pricier too. When I did go see him, he just took a look at me and he's like, have you ever heard of PCOS? And I was like, yeah. And you know, he's like, I think you might have that. Like, do you ever think about just getting on like birth control? And I'm like, I've done all of this already. Like, I'm sorry, like, no offense, doctor, but I've done all of this already, and I'm just so sick of hearing this, like saying that, you know, these temporary fixes, just please, if you could just test me for like everything under the sun, and I really want to get to the bottom of what's going on with me. So he agreed, you know, he tested me, he did like those basic blood hormone tests, and then actually he tested me for almost everything, okay, everything, and it was pretty pricey because I didn't even have insurance, but I was like, I don't care, I need to figure it out. So, you know, we did the basic blood panel, and then we did the hormonal blood panel too, and then my cortisol level came out high in the hormone evaluation. So he called me back to just like make sure, and I think he asked me to take a dexamethasone something suppression test. And what it is it's supposed to suppress your cortisol. I'm sorry, I don't remember what it was, but I basically took it and my cortisol was still high, and so he made me retake it like twice, right? So it was confirmed that I do have high cortisol. And you know, he looked at me, he's like, I don't think you have any symptoms that like a Cushing's patient would have. And you know, I mean, I was fairly skinnier and I wasn't like obese.
I finally decided to put all my information together, and I decided then, so that was about 5 years ago, to follow a low-carb ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting. And within just a few months, 3 months, maybe even less than that, I was off all of my medication. No more hypertension medication, no more metformin, no more antidepressants. My weight went back to normal. My blood glucose, A1C, even my insulin levels, which I did test, were back to normal. But better than all of that is that my mood and my sleep stabilized as well.
So what you see is that in PCOS, so if we kind of go beyond the fertility issues and the sort of acne and so on, what you see is that there's a huge spectrum of disease cardiovascular disease, sleep apnea, non-alcoholic fatty liver, which is that picture of the liver, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and so on. And all of them are really diseases of too much insulin. And it's not like nobody knows this stuff. So this is a review article from the New England Journal of Medicine. And in a very nice fancy picture, it shows you exactly what the problem is with PCOS. So if you look at the picture, the key is the hyperinsulinemia. You can see that the hyperinsulinemia goes down to the ovary, which tells it to, produce more androgens. It blocks the sex hormone, the SHBG, the sex hormone binding globulin on the left, and it causes the obesity and so on. But again, this is pretty easy to understand that everything here is really a disease of too much insulin. And this is the part that sort of logic just breaks down. Because
it's vitally important that at our medical schools we start to teach insulin resistance as the single most important medical condition across the globe. This is the disease we should be worried about. Of course we must be concerned about HIV and tuberculosis and all those other diseases, but this is the real problem. And I'm briefly going to go through it. And the answer, as we as a panel believe, and has been frequently spoken at this conference, is that these are not diseases per se, except perhaps this becomes a disease. They're conditions that are caused by an abnormal biological response to an abnormal input. And the abnormal input is the high carbohydrate diet. And we have to know where we sit on this curve. And we have to know where every patient we deal with sits on this curve. Are they carbohydrate tolerant or intolerant? And if they're tolerant, they're usually sensitive, insulin sensitive athletes, normal body weight. But down at this end, where many of us sit, this is the problem. If you continue to eat carbohydrates, that's what's going to happen. You're going to develop type 2 diabetes. It's very simple. There's one slide shows you the whole mechanism, how it happens. That's insulin resistance. And the first problem, in my view, it's a genetic predisposition, progressively worsens with age, and a high carbohydrate diet. And Jason showed us evidence for that. As we get older and we eat high carbohydrate diets, we become more insulin resistant. The key abnormality is a liver that produces too much glucose. And the next feature is that we have a reduced capacity to store and use the carbohydrates as a fuel. And as a consequence, our blood glucose and insulin levels are always high, particularly when we eat carbohydrates. And as many people have shown already, you have to convert that carbohydrate into fat in the liver and then to blood triglycerides. And a consequence is that lowers your HDL and it raises your small dense LDL cholesterol particles, which are considered toxic. And as a consequence of all that, you then develop this atherogenic dyslipidemia, which I'm going to come back to. But notice the emphasis is not on cholesterol, it's on triglycerides, HDL, and small dense LDL particles. What's really interesting, I think, in the last year or two is that the key abnormality in type 2 diabetes is dysregulation of pancreatic glucagon production, not insulin. That's going to become really interesting. And the problem in treatment of diabetes is that we give insulin, and insulin can't correct that problem for reasons. And that's why Justin Fung gave this amazing lecture why insulin actually hurts the diabetic patient when it's